Good evening, CCW. It's really good to be back with you this evening and to continue our last in our series on visions in the Bible. When I was praying through and discerning what it is we needed to talk about in this season, vision was the thing that came to mind because this is the time in your life for it. I hope it's the time in my life for it too, but especially in a season where there is dreaming and hope and a lot of energy around what is going to happen in your future. Oftentimes I felt like I just wish that I could have a vision and know exactly what I needed to do, what the next right step was, and what I was hoping for. And thinking about the ways that God is speaking, the ways that God has spoken, was a way that I hoped we could ground that conversation around what God has for us. And so I hope what we've seen is that throughout these visions, even God's most close, most well-known, most holy and righteous people never got a clear vision, a step-by-step guide of what they were supposed to do next in order to serve God. Instead, these visions gave them a sense of who God was and a way of being that they needed to embody so that they could determine the next right step from that. Sure, it would have been easy if God's vision to Peter was of Cornelius knocking on his door. Rather, God wanted Peter to embody the type of spirit that would be able to see anybody who knocked on his door as someone who God had created, who God is pursuing, and who God loved. Or sure, it might be easier if Isaiah could really see himself showing and preaching and being this amazing prophet for God's people. But instead, God shows him glory, the type of glory that would fill more than the temple, where just the hem of his robe would fill the entire space, in a way that gave Isaiah the opportunity to consent to showing that glory, and also to be able to be purified by that vision so that his way of being would be showing just glimpses of that glory through the prophecies he would be asked to deliver by God. However, in this particular season, I have also gotten a sense that vision is something that has been put on hold for many of us. That what we hoped for, what we dreamed, what we were wondering about, and the worries of whether or not that next right step was in fact the right step, have been somewhat put on hold. That for some of us, we're not sure if it's worth the effort of taking another step right now while we wait for the world to go back to normal. Having vision, sensing what God would be doing in our lives seems to be not as important as the immediate issues in the moment. And I feel that what has happened with a lack of vision has been a community that is running in that emergency mode and running on empty day after day after day. What I think we see in vision is a renewed purpose, an imagination, and a hope that keeps us moving in the right direction. Which brings us directly to our text for today in Revelation. So, in general, I'm going to say that Revelation is probably not your favorite book. It's not my favorite book. And I think a lot of the reasons for that is that it is often very much misunderstood. What I was saying earlier about visions not being this clear thing that we ever see in the Bible where God gives us step after step after step, somehow we've taken this amazing revelation that John has and we've turned it into a step-by-step guide so that we're making these interpretations on what's happening in our world and calling them these different pieces of John's vision, such that they would set up in a linear chain of events that comes around to the end of the world, the apocalypse. And while this literature is apocalyptic literature, it is not future telling or linear storytelling in that way. It is a culmination of signs and visions that give us some imagination of who God is and what the future will be like so that we might be able to find a way of being for us to be able to take those next right steps. There was a time, so while I was in seminary, I did an internship in which I did intensive in-home family therapy with families. It would be spending 10 hours a week for 4 weeks working with them through a crisis to be able to kind of enhance and build up their resources to make sure that the family was safe. There were lots of different strategies for us to be able to help families set goals and use their own resources to think about how they could get to those goals. And one of my favorite ones was something we called the wish question. And I'm going to ask y'all the wish question. I would invite you to, as you're willing or as you want to share, to put your wish in the comments. The wish question is, if you had a magic wand, if you could wave a magic wand, what problem would you magic away? Think about that now, and you can share it. And then we would invite the family to say, cool, that's your wish. Now walk me through what tomorrow looks like if that wish happened. If you had a magic wand and you were able to solve one problem in the world, maybe someone put in the comments, I wish that coronavirus would disappear. What would it look like to wake up Monday morning and live in a world where coronavirus didn't exist? What would you do? What would you, who would you be? How would you interact with people around you? What would that next step be for you? And who are you doing those steps? Are you a person who is imagining a world where you can live connected with other people? Are there steps we can take so that we can continue to be connected now? The other question I would ask you is, you had a magic wand. Was your wish big enough? So using that example, the wish being that coronavirus disappeared. You have a magic wand. Why not wish for all sickness to disappear? Because that's what we actually see in this text, right? We imagine this world in which the new heaven and the new earth is created. And what is gotten rid of? Tears, death, mourning, crying, and pain, all of it magically wiped away, living in a world where there only exists love and hope and peace and joy and all of these things that we know God is and who God calls us to be as well. It's this amazing vision in which not only the earth is made new, but the heaven is made new as well. because there's something about the separation between heaven and earth that isn't quite sitting right with God, where the good thing about God is that God would be in relationship, unhindered, and bound to creation, bound to us, bound to the trees and the land and the world and everything around us, that God would be a part of it. That we get this hope and this vision that everything will be made new. Now, oftentimes, I think we end up getting limited. We get stuck in that place of vision and wish. We somehow hear this vision, this future, and this hope, and we think that sounds nice, and it's something we have to wait for. It's why I really dislike when in seasons like Advent, where we use an example of, waiting for Christmas presents as the example of what Advent is like. Because there's nothing you can do to prepare to get a Christmas present. You just have to wait. You just have to sit there and hope that December 25th will come as soon as it's supposed to come, right? Instead, I think we need pictures that allow us to prepare, because the new heaven and the new earth make it sound like we don't get to experience those good things in this life. Hoping and seeing a glimpse of what that future would be like should inspire and encourage us to bring about the heaven on earth in the kingdom here, that we might be able to see glimpses of a world that for a moment exists without pain, or without tears, or without mourning, or without death, that for a moment we are able to work through practical restoration to solve issues that we see around us that cause pain and hurt and suffering, that we might not be able to magic away illnesses, but we can create spaces where people can be healthier. That we can't magic away issues of hunger, but we can create spaces of sharing where people's bellies will be filled. That we can't magic away issues of mental illness, but we can create space where people can feel less alone and more empowered to take that next step in their own mental wellness. That while I so look forward to a vision and a day in which all things will be made new, that I also know that something, not all things, but something can be made new today or tomorrow. And that's what we're invited into in our vision. Amen.